Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know we have people joining us from all over the state, and I am joining you here from southern Minnesota, which is Waldorf, Minnesota, on my family's farm. And I hope it is not as windy where you're at as it is here, because holy cow, you might blow away outside. But it looks like it's nice and warm out. So hopefully everyone can get outside to enjoy the nice weather today. But thank you all for coming to our first interconnected rural-urban conversation. My name is Julie Tesh, and I'm the president and CEO of the Center for Rural Policy and Development. The Center for Rural Policy and Development is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that is dedicated to providing Minnesota's policymakers with an unbiased evaluation of issues from a rural perspective. We are also, we're a nonpartisan research organization, and we'd like to take those complicated and complex issues that we all like to talk about, and we'd like to present them in a way that give meaning and relevance. Our research is not designed to determine public policy, but instead inform those making decisions, like many of you on here today. While our research does focus on rural Minnesota, our audience is not only rural Minnesota policymakers. The intended audience for our research are policymakers in both rural and urban areas, including city council members, county commissioners, and anyone who is interested in really good policy discussions. While we recognize that there's a perceived divide between rural and urban residents, we believe that there's more that joins us together than breaks us apart. All residents of Minnesota want the best possible life for themselves and for their family. No matter where you live in the state, you care about access to healthcare, workforce development, quality schools, and the list goes on. The differences don't come in the topics, but in the solution, and that is where good policy comes into play, and I know that's why all of you are here today. What may work well in St. Paul and in the suburbs may not work well in Redwood Falls or in Thief River Falls, for the simple fact that populations are different. We need to start looking at forming good policy that is not just a blanket policy for the whole state, but provides nuances for diversity of place. Economies of scale might work in more urban and regional centers, but may not work in less populated rural areas. We are really excited to host this conversation series with the Citizens League. This has been a dream of mine for about a year and a half, 2 years, that started over coffee with Pahua Hoffman and with Amanda Kunj Bahari. And we had just met for the first time at that Caribou in Lakeville. And we got talking about, wouldn't it be great to learn about policy issues from rural and urban? And our policy wonk selves got really excited and said, how cool would this be? And we really have more common than we think. And so this is a culmination of a year and a half to 2 years of a lot of excitement, and happy to have you all here today. Before we get started, what we're going to be doing today is we're on webinar feature. And so if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A, and we are going to be, actually you can put it in the chat, well, or Q&A, either one. We have someone who's monitoring that, and we'll be asking the questions after we get done with the panel. So very excited to have you all here today. CRP and the Citizens League have the common goal of playing a role in creating and implementing innovative and effective policy solutions. We really look forward to not only this first conversation on childcare, but our future monthly conversations where we can all listen and learn from one another. So thank you again for participating today. And I am now very happy. Oh, and yes, I'm breaking up. You will all be very happy that I will be getting off of here because I am on really bad internet. Sorry. So I'm going to introduce Kate Cimino, Executive Director of the Citizens League.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. And see you because I know you're there. Someday we will be in person again at these kind of events and having coffee, like Julie said, and doing all our good thinking together. Until then, I found that these virtual events can actually be a really effective, really good way to just instantly get people together from all around the state, which is particularly important in this conversation today. So thank you for being here and for joining us. As Julie said, my name is Kate Cimino, and I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of the Citizens League. The Citizens League, we help people of Minnesota engage in issues that are important to them by learning about policy issues and activating their voices to create innovative solutions and new solutions. And we call policymaking, and we call it civic leadership. And it is what we do. It's why we do it, because we believe that better outcomes emerge from having more people involved. The Citizens League is a nonprofit. We're based in St. Paul, but we work statewide. We are also nonpartisan as an organization, but I like to say that the people that we engage with through our work and that we encourage to get involved in public policy work are multi-partisan. It's a word I made up that we use at the Citizens League that we really enjoy, because there are so many different perspectives, lenses, ideologies that emerge when you really start digging in on issues. And we need space and we need time to do that type of deeper thinking and exploring some of those nuances, because otherwise it becomes too simplified. So we need this time, and we appreciate having this time to dig in with you on certain specific issues and how they show up. We are, part of our mission is to bring together and explore different ways of looking at issues, different perspectives and ideologies. And we know that sometimes that emerges as different perspectives in rural or small town, larger city, metro area. And that's part of what we at the Citizens League seek to do, is to create those opportunities as well. I love how Julie framed it up, that solutions can and should be nuanced for different communities and different parts of the state. And that's something I'm really looking forward to talking about with you today. So I am going to turn it, let's see, what am I doing? I'm introducing, I think I'm going to turn it back over to
I'll take it from here and
yeah, Julie's going to introduce the next step in our program. So
awesome.
thanks again on behalf of the Citizens League as well. We're thrilled to be part of this partnership and excited about this kickoff and the rest of our series ahead.
Thanks so much, Kate. We're very, very grateful to the Citizens League to be partners with them on this. And if you didn't catch it before, I apologize for my bad internet. Here on a farm in southern Minnesota. This is a good reason why we should invest in rural broadband investments, because I know my mouth is not matching up with the sound. I fully know that. I'm sorry. This is the way I work every day. But right now I'd like to introduce Marnie Werner, who is our Senior Vice President of Research and Operations. And she is going to go over our most recent research, give you kind of a 30,000 foot view on childcare research in rural Minnesota. So Marnie, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Kate. Let me see if I can get my screen shared here now. I want this one. Okay, and then I need to do that. Okay, so yeah, today we're going to be looking at Minnesota's childcare crisis. And so I'm just going to give a very high level overview of some numbers from the last year and from the past 20 years. So we all know that the quality of childcare, the quality of a child's care growing up is crucial to their development, especially in their earliest years. As we found out this last year in 2020, it's also crucial to parents being able to work, especially for women. And so what happened in 2020? The big reason, the big question regarding childcare has been the impact the pandemic had on it. And here are the numbers. During 2020, we lost about 36 centers statewide and 317 family operations. The table has the state broken out by region. So you can see how many actual operations were lost and how much capacity was lost or gained, in the case of centers. We also gained 50 new centers and 221 family operations. And that gain in centers wasn't enough to offset the loss in family childcare capacity. We gained about 1,000 center spaces, but lost 4,000 family spaces overall. So for a net loss of about 3,000 spaces. Since 2000, Minnesota's center capacity has grown by 60%, and that's the number of spaces being provided through center-based care. But family child care, which is the in-home child care that we think of, that we often think of as daycare, that capacity has dropped by 50% since 2000. So in other words, we have lost half of our family childcare capacity. So when you break it down by region, the picture looks a little different. Over the last 20 years, the Twin Cities has had a net change of minus 2,600 spaces. So the loss in family childcare capacity was almost made up for in gains in center childcare capacity in the Twin Cities. In rural areas, though, the growth in center capacity wasn't even close to covering the loss in family capacity. So as you can see, Greater Minnesota has lost over 20,000 childcare spaces, all while the population has continued to go up in both rural and urban Minnesota. And this is a big deal for rural regions, this loss of family childcare capacity, because they depend, rural areas depend much more on family childcare. More than half of rural Minnesota's childcare capacity comes from family childcare, while most of the capacity in the Twin Cities is provided by centers. In fact, just 5 years ago, family childcare's share of capacity was much higher. It was 67% in Greater Minnesota and 33% in the Twin Cities, which also shows how fast we're losing family providers. And how did we get to this point? It's probably mostly because the economics of childcare don't work these days. From a provider's perspective, in an ideal world, which you see on the left there, a provider would start her business in an area that has within its radius enough families with high enough incomes to cover what she needs to charge to cover her expenses and maybe make a little profit. The reality, though, is that few places actually fit these criteria. Many rural areas don't have enough families needing childcare within a reasonable distance who have a high enough income to cover her expenses. And in urban areas, there may be many families nearby, but they may not be able to pay enough to cover expenses. And from the urban family's perspective, there may be plenty of options to choose from, but they are all too expensive. And from the rural family's perspective, there are just very few options, regardless of income. That's because centers can be prohibitively expensive to start in areas without enough families. And as family providers leave the business, few women are coming in to replace them. And that's the big issue right there with family providers. And so the result is a childcare, well, not sure what I wrote here, but the result is you have geographical areas around huge swaths of the state without enough childcare options to offer a family choice of care type or cost. There isn't any official definition of a childcare desert like there is for a food desert. But researchers at the University of Minnesota have tried to map childcare access based on the locations of childcare providers, families with small children, and average incomes. The orange dots indicate areas of childcare scarcity, while blue dots indicate areas of adequate childcare. So as you can see, there are not a lot of blue dots, but there are a lot of orange dots in both rural and urban places. And so that is a really quick overview of childcare and why it's an issue and why we need to be concerned about it statewide. And so thank you. And I'll turn it over to Kate or Christina, who's ever next.
Yeah, thanks, Marnie. I think I'm going to introduce Christina. Again, thanks, Marnie, for the research overview. And I know I already have a bunch of questions. I want to dig in deeper on that data. So I think we'll be looking forward to doing that. Christina, I'm pleased to have you with us today. We are in for a treat with a pro journalist, reporter, and host with us today. Christina currently is at Park Street Public and serves as a senior principal, public relations and communications, but she has more than 15 years of broadcast journalism experience and brings that with her as her capacities to host and really explore some really cool conversations with us today. So we are thrilled to have Christina with us, and I will turn it over to you to introduce our guests.
Yes, thank you so much, Kate. I appreciate it. And it's very much a privilege to be here and moderating this event. As Kate said, former TV journalist, so I know how to ask a good question or two, and I'm just really excited to dig deep into this conversation and really get a great perspective from all of the panelists representing diverse backgrounds and different parts of our state. And I'm a mother of 2 little children who are currently in the daycare system. So obviously this topic is very personal to me as well. So let's just start off by introducing our great panelists. I'm going to start off with Shirley. If you can just introduce yourself and just talk about very quickly what you do and what type of a daycare service that you run, that would be great. Shirley, let's start off with you.
Okay. My name is Shirley Toby. I've been in the daycare business for about 15 years now. Have a degree in business management. I love what I do. I'm so excited to be here on this panel to dig deep into the purpose of which we are here. So I'm excited. I'm grateful that I'm here. And I look forward to all of the questions to be able to participate and have a conversation.
Diane. Diane, do you want to go next?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Christina. I'm Diane Halsey, and I hope you all can hear me, but I'm Diane Halsey, and I am the Senior Vice President of Family Engagement at Think Small. It's a Twin Cities childcare resource and referral organization. I've been there about 6 years, but I've worked in the field of early childhood and human services for over 25 years. I also co-chair the Voices and Choices for Children's Coalition. And part of the work that I do at Think Small, I oversee a set of early childhood programming, which includes the administration of early learning scholarships. And I'm very, very happy to be here today.
Excellent. Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, hamidakiapi ahipi kimashte. Vanessa Guthander makiapi dakotias nasnawi demie. Chanshapi de mataha. Wana chanshapi wakayajo oyawa oti ed hawaniye. Oyawa oitancha hemachiye. Hello, everybody. My name is Vanessa Guthander. My Dakota name is Jingling Woman, and I come from where they paint the trees red, which is the Lower Sioux Indian community in Southwest Minnesota. So we are one of the 4 Dakota communities in southern Minnesota. So to the left, you're going to see some corn, and to the right, you're going to see some more corn. And I am the director of the Chanshapi Wakayaja Oyawa OT, which is the Lower Sioux Children's Sacred Earth School, and we are a birth to 5 Dakota immersion school. So very excited to be here, and I will just pass it over to my colleague, Ariella.
Amitakiapi, Ariella Leaf, Imakiapie, Dakota ia Ampetui Wakawia Demie, Chanchayapi Wakanija, Owawa Oti Echtawani, Waunspebe Chakya, Tiata Hemachaye. Hello, my name is Ariella. My Dakota name is Day Spirit Woman, and I too work at the Lower Sioux Early Head Start and Head Start. I am the home-based teacher, and so I serve 10 out of the 84 families that we serve here in the Lower Sioux community.
And last but not least, Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Devos, and I am an early care and education preschool teacher. I also own an early childhood center in Ada, Minnesota, which is up in the northwestern part of the state. I also come from a family childcare background of family childcare for nearly 16 years. So in addition, I serve as co-president of the Minnesota chapter of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and as the vice chair of policy and advocacy for the Minnesota Childcare Association.
Great. Well, just quickly, I'd like to go around and have everybody from their perspective talk about just the state of how they feel the childcare industry is in for them, where we're at in the pandemic. We've been in the pandemic for a year. You know, Minnesota is doing really well with vaccinations. So we're kind of seeing this light at the end of the tunnel. But if everyone could kind of go around and just very quickly kind of talk about where they feel their industry from their perspective is, I think that would be a great place to start. Karen, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in our community, in Ada and in our entire county, we're the only center care provider. So the majority of providers are family child care. I think as amazing as that is, there is this this whole group of people who are moving out of that field in our county. And so what we're seeing is a tremendous need for care. We're getting a lot of phone calls. We don't even do waiting lists anymore because there's really no point. I fill the spots as quickly as I open them up. So we are in the process of getting another center open. And really the only way that this centerpiece works for us in our county is through partnerships with local businesses. So we work with nursing homes and put childcare facilities in those spaces. And that's the only way that it's really sustainable.
Vanessa, would you like to talk about, you know, what the childcare industry and the state it's in, what it means for you and your partner?
Yeah, so here on the Lower Sioux, we went into a state of emergency the same time as the state of Minnesota did. And with that, we have 60 children in our child care center. So we wanted to make sure that we went right to distance learning. And we were able to find emergency grants so that we could pay for smaller child cares to be helped with for our kids to be able to go there instead of opening up and having 60 kids come together. We continued with distance learning and services to help continue with the wraparound services so that we can continue, because I think that's very important. And then we returned to in-person learning on February 8th of this year. So we're really excited to be back. I think COVID did absolutely hurt these child cares when we were reaching out. A lot of them have closed once the pandemic started. And so now we're just trying to continue to help be able to give PPE out, continue with those safety standards that they weren't able to afford because they were so busy paying and affording for other items to help with mitigation.
Ariella, what it's been like for you in, you know, dealing with the pandemic for a year, and now, you know, we're, like I said, we're looking at a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel here. Just talk about your experience.
It was definitely hard. Not only did my 10 families lose a weekly visitor, in-person learning and things like that, I was also stuck at home with my own 3.5-year-old who couldn't come here to the center anymore. And so it was really tough, but like a lot of people, we stuck through it. We continued distant learning, providing any and everything that we could. And so we're so very fortunate to have been able to give them still resources throughout this tough time. And now I'm back into the homes. We allowed parents to make that decision if they wanted in-person or distant learning. A majority of my parents were like, come back in, we miss you, we need you. And so I'm so happy to be back and working and seeing the kids again, because they've all grown so much.
For sure. Diane?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, first I can say there's been a real sharp decrease, as you can imagine, in families attending childcare, which has had a real impact on our scholarship program. We also are finding that even though a lot of the programs, we were pleasantly surprised that many programs hadn't actually closed. But with the restrictions on how many children can be in a classroom, and just simply, you know, by the fact that a lot of families are choosing not to attend, many programs are really, really struggling in terms of making ends meet because they just, the math was precarious before the pandemic in terms of the business model for childcare. And so this just made it even worse in terms of actually trying to be able to make ends meet. The other thing I will say is that, I do want to say that Minnesota, I think you mentioned, has done some things well, though. And I think one of the things we did well is that we tried our best to prioritize childcare. So there has been some level of assistance. Many states didn't do anything, and so you'll see a lot higher number of childcare programs closing in some of those states, but Minnesota did at least try to give, some assistance, and we have heard that has been tremendously helpful. Lastly, I'll mention that Think Small did some outreach calls initially to providers in Hennepin and Ramsey County just to see if they were okay right after the pandemic started. And then we did another follow-up call about 6 months later. And I have to say, those follow-up calls, and this of course not only was several months into the pandemic, but also after the unrest and the murder of George Floyd in South Minneapolis. And I have to tell you, some of those outreach calls were extremely difficult, even for our staff to take because of the emotional stress that a lot of the providers were under, and just all of the things that they were juggling. It was, for some, was just really taking a toll.
Yeah, that's really well said. It's been a very emotional year here in the Twin Cities, for sure. Shirley, just from your perspective, running your business out of your home, where has the pandemic left you, and where do you think, from your perspective, the state of childcare is right now?
Well, before the pandemic, we had about 14 kids in the daycare. And then when the pandemic hit the country, we went down as low as 6. So, but I was holding on because I had some nurses, kids in the daycare, teachers, and we couldn't just close on them because they had to go to work. So we kind of struggled in between there. Like Diane said, Think Small was a very big help because whatever Think Small came in with helped us to get over the threshold, to get us moving. But it was a real tough time. I mean, we were afraid of the disease, then afraid of our businesses closing. It was a really big struggle. But now, like you said, Christine, like the light is at the end of the tunnel. We can see that something good is about to happen. So our hopes are high, and we are just looking forward to a great year. But it was a really big struggle. We just managed to push ourselves through that. And if you carry the message to Think Small, I say thank you a whole lot to Think Small, because whatever they did was a big help, and they are still helping.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely think the industry as a whole has not really gotten the recognition it deserves for, really working through and being dedicated to staying open as much as you can, especially for those essential workers whose kids had to go somewhere. So I just want to have a little shout out to everybody on that one. What has the pandemic and the fallout from it taught you about the childcare industry from a metro and rural perspective? So Karen, if you can kind of, talk about the rural perspective, what has it just taught you about, we said the childcare industry was in a crisis before the pandemic hit. What have you learned from this past year?
I don't know if I learned anything new. Honestly, I've always known how essential this industry is. It's been wonderful, though, to see it be recognized as such. And I think our governor and our lieutenant governor have done a really good job lifting up early childhood as a whole. And I'm thankful for that. But in terms of what I've always known this, right? I would say for the first time, I think my staff, my team are starting to be recognized as professionals. And that is really exciting to see.
For sure. Vanessa?
I would just have to echo what Karen said. I don't think I learned anything. They always put in the Redwood Gazette said that was the Southwest childcare crisis. So that wasn't anything new to us, but I think folks started really seeing the importance of the childcare sector that we all see every single day, and we all are really pushing for that policy to follow behind it for that official acknowledgement. But I think the pandemic really highlighted it in a way that might hopefully speed that momentum quicker.
Yeah. Ariella?
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diane?
Yeah, I want to kind of echo what Vanessa said. I don't know if I learned anything different, but what I hope is that everyone else learned how important the childcare system is, and not just important for, I mean, it's important for so many different reasons. It's important for all of our families, but it is essential for our economy. In order for our economy to come back, after this pandemic, we need a healthy early childhood system. And I really hope that this pandemic has hit that home for many people, but especially for policymakers that are making some of those decisions.
Shirley, anything you would like to quickly add on that?
Well, I would just join Diane to say that I really hope that people will see how important this whole childcare business is. It's not just babysitting, it's really educating your child. So I hope they would change their mindset from this whole babysitting thing and try to look at childcare providers as one of the first educators of the children, and be able to give childcare providers the support that they need to be able to, for us to have the quality of daycare centers and family in-home family daycare, so that we can be able to transfer that quality to the children. And so that's what I have to say right now.
Well, Shirley, let's dig deeper into that. You talk about, what do you think needs to be done to support business owners like yourself in this industry?
Well, one of the things that I've been thinking on is that in the child care, whether it be a center or in home, we struggle a lot with finding quality helpers or teachers. In the in-home daycare, a helper will sometimes teach. In the center, I want to believe that an aide can sometimes teach also, but mostly you are there to guide the kids. Now, then we all know that there is a big turnover when it comes to employment in the childcare. And the reason being is that childcare, whether you center or you in-home daycare, you don't have the support that you need. When I say support, I mean like what you have. You have employers, and then you have benefits. You have benefits coming with that. You got employer, and you don't have anything that has to do with medical. You don't have 401k. There's nothing ready, because the money you're making from the childcare is not enough to be able to sustain all of those areas. And nobody wants to come to work to a place where they can be able to go and see a doctor when they're not well and things like that. So all of those factors, and then coupled with it, your pay is not up to, where you want it to be. And all of those factors contribute to people turning. Everybody is trying to look for a better living. Now, you can't sit somewhere where you can advance yourself. And it's just so difficult for childcare to do that, because we don't have the money to be able to do that. So that's one of the things I see that we are really struggling with. The big turnover in childcare is huge.
Yeah. Ariella, you're kind of the counterpoint of Shirley in Southwest Minnesota, running the in-home based part of the program. Just talk to me about what type of support you think needs to happen from here on forward for this industry?
Support wherever anybody can get it. I believe we are very fortunate here on Lower Sea Reservation. Vanessa knows the finances and things like that. We're very fortunate, and but there isn't a lot of people out here, and so luckily we have a lot of staff here, but we also have staff that come and we have staff that go, and any support, especially when it comes to when you're coming to an immersion school where you're learning a new language, a new culture possibly, it's so essential for the people that come to have like inspiration behind them, where they want to come do this. And unfortunately, I think no matter where you go, it's going to be hard to find that, but very fortunate we have a pretty good crew here. So
Diane, from the Metro perspective, what do you think needs to be some of the top priorities coming out of this pandemic to support this industry?
Well, first, I will say I wholeheartedly support continued financial support for this industry, for childcare providers and programs, because even as we begin to come back, I think we have to recognize that this field, the people that are working in this field, I would say even for the next couple of years are going to need significant investments and significant supports to maintain at the level that we need the industry to maintain in order for our economy to revive. So I'm fully supportive of those efforts. I'll also say I want to echo something that Julie said earlier when she opened up, in that these supports are needed across the state, but there may be some ways that they are offered differently depending on the needs of each community. Each community has different needs, and so that should also be taken into consideration, as we're giving and developing policies for continued support for all providers.
That's great. I'm going to go off script here because I have a question from someone tuning into this webinar. I think it's really good. And Karen, it's for you. What incentives could be explored to encourage more people to enter the childcare industry as a career? And you can answer from the perspective of a center.
Sorry. I think tax credits are huge. I mean, there are just so many pieces, right? We've got the Child Care Assistance Program that is lackluster at best. We have a really hard time keeping that even in compliance. We need to get that up so that our rates are up and appropriate, so that the people who are serving low-income children and families can then turn around and pay their staff an adequate wage. That would be first. I think tax credits for the people who work in childcare, the people who are educators, the businesses who partner with early childhood programs by perhaps paying a portion, tax credits there as well. Tax credits for our children and families are huge. We have to make financial investments across the board, and we have to do that so that as a business, we can then turn around and pay sustainable wages to our to our employees, as well as be able to provide benefits, because without benefits, it's really hard to keep people on long term. And as a small business owner, it's near impossible to provide those benefits when I'm barely making ends meet.
Yeah, for sure. Another question I thought was really good. What are some of the proposed solutions to shift the business model to be more sustainable and profitable? Who is leading this work? Does anyone want to take a stab at that question?
Go ahead, Diane. I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Karen. I'll just mention that I do know that there are efforts, advocacy efforts around the state to push this forward. There is a group called the BA group, or the Birth to 8 group, a workforce group, and they have been doing they've been around for a few years, and they've been doing a lot of work primarily to push people towards recognizing that we need a livable wage for childcare providers and educators, and that we don't really have one right now. And that how do we, how can we support that? And I see in the chat, there's a comment from my friend Nancy Jost about making childcare less of a business and more of a common good or infrastructure. And I just want to say I fully support that because it is a common good. We don't, we have our public school system, and there are certain things that the government has deemed that we need, like food, for instance. And so when farmers struggle, the government will help, farmers because we need the food. And I would say that we need childcare. Our economic system needs childcare. And so I think that we should find ways that we can support it, like a common good as well.
Yeah, and that's a question that I'm seeing repeated. Is it a business or a public good? Karen, do you want to weigh in on that?
I think it's both. And I think it needs to be recognized as both. For so long, we've left this early care piece to really be taken care of by the people providing the care and the families who are receiving it, and it doesn't work. And now we're all of a sudden in this space where it's starting to be recognized as something bigger and more important to our communities and to our economy. And the more that we invest, and there's so many different ways we can invest through the programs for the children. We can invest through programs that go to workforce development and higher education. We can invest to programs that go towards quality, because we know that that's important too. All of those pieces have to come together.
Yeah. Let's talk about childcare deserts. That's a topic I covered as a reporter. It's a real thing in a lot of different areas, especially here in Minnesota. Vanessa, do you want to take a crack at this topic? I mean, obviously this is something I'm sure you guys see a lot in your area.
Absolutely. There isn't a lot of childcare in the area. I don't know how much more I could say it that way, but what are some solutions we can see? I think putting dollars into the wage comparability for early childhood workers, putting dollars into credentialing support so that childcare workers can get their CDA, can go into their associates, can go into their bachelor's, because it is a profession. I saw a question, what can the private sector do? I've seen a couple awesome ideas. Private sectors have come together to help pay for the mandatory trainings that early child care professionals have to do, such as CPR training, SIDS training, all of those different trainings that need to happen, and we have to pay out of our dollars to be able to continue with the licensure, which is absolutely something. I feel like the licensing standards are awesome, but also we need to help fund them. So I think that's something to answer that. What can the private sector do is put those dollars into the helping with the credentialing support, helping with the training. I think here, for sure, we do wraparound services. So that's with our mental health consultants. In our Head Start room alone, we have 66% of them getting support from social emotional through our mental health consultants. That's going to therapy, going to social emotional classes, or they have an IEP, which is an individual education plan. So children with disabilities is what it's under the IDEA Act. And so with those, we need extra support there. And I think it's really important to push the wraparound services. So it just takes a whole village and it takes a whole community. So putting dollars into those mental health supports for the childcare sector, and then putting into the disabilities, we have that. And I think that's really good. I want to push that for the social emotional domain next. I think I answered that, and I answered a little bit more too. So I will be done there.
That was great. Shirley, in your perspective, how do we come up with some good solutions to fix the childcare desert problem, especially in the metro urban areas?
I would say that to fix that, There are a couple of things that we need to do. Just like Vanessa said, I think Diane kind of somehow mentioned that also, is that we need more money. We need people to be trained. We need to make the whole childcare area attractive, so that people will be coming in there and not coming to be like babysitters, but they will be coming there as a professional people or persons, so that they will see the field the way it's supposed to be. That means the training has to be subsidized, to get people trained. Uh, after the training, we also need to look at the wages. You know, we need to get some kind of subsidy to help with the wages, because if the wages is attractive, that will cause people to want to come into that area and want to come to work and do other things. If the wages are not attractive, it's going to be difficult for people to come in because people are looking for a better living. Okay. So those are some of the things you need to look at: getting people trained adequately and being able to make wages attractive to call people into the field.
Yeah. I just thought a comment here. I think we overuse the word care when talking about childcare. We need to use the word education more, as the state of Minnesota requires in state statute to provide curriculum and education to the children. This is a public sector responsibility, and the public sector should be providing sustainable subsidization. Thoughts on that?
I love it. I think about it as early care and education. I'm educating and I'm caring for children at the same time. And so often the interactions that our children are having are education. The question is it good education or is it not good education? Is it quality or is it not? So yes, but I don't think we can eliminate care from the equation. There are a lot of family childcare providers in my area who don't want to be seen as teachers. They want to be seen as a childcare provider, and we have to honor that as well. It's really important.
Ariella?
Yeah, that statement is amazing. And most definitely the child care providers, everything a child does, especially at young ages, they are learning, they are forming, they are discovering and exploring their world. And so all the people that go into teaching that child the rights, the wrongs, the colors, the shapes, all the simple human basic things, it's education, and you're caring for that child. So that's very, very true.
Yeah. Well, let's switch a little bit to just diversity of ownership and diversity with children. We always talk about, and it's important for my children to have, children of different backgrounds, and representation matters. It's just so important, for our future generations. From a cultural or racial perspective, what are the challenges running a business in this industry, as well as providing care, again, for children of all different backgrounds? Diane, would you like to go?
Sure. I do just want to reiterate that I am not doing direct service at this time like some of the other people on the panel, but I can say from my experience that first off, I know that there is a need from a lot of families of color, a lot of families that where English is not their first language, to have their child at a provider that speaks their language or is reflective of their culture. And so I think that we need to always hold that in our, as we're making policy, we need to always kind of hold that, in front of us, because we don't want to create any kind of policies that push those providers out of the field. Oftentimes, although those numbers may be growing, in terms of how many providers of color that we have, or how many providers we even have in our parent aware system, there's still kind of small compared to the large number, of other providers that we have. And oftentimes when, we live in Minnesota, so oftentimes when we do have a child of color that is able to attend a program or provider, educator that looks like them or speaks the language that they do, that may be the only time in their entire educational system in Minnesota that happens. And so I think we need to not forget that, because that can be really important, especially in terms of the development, of that child. And so, I'll just say that. I'll also say, we talked a little bit about childcare deserts earlier, and I'll say that in the metro area, a lot of those childcare deserts land in places where, in low-income neighborhoods, places where there are a lot of families of color. And so, so a lot of families of color are living in areas of childcare deserts, even though, we looked at the data that Marnie shared earlier, even though there hasn't been an overall huge loss in slots in the Twin Cities. What I would say to that is that there are places in the Twin Cities, particularly probably in some of the suburban areas, where there may even be an oversaturation of center slots. That probably is true. But then there are places, especially in the low-income neighborhoods, where that exact opposite is the case. And many of those places are places where our families of color are living. They're living in childcare deserts. And so, so that's also something to kind of consider, And I also, don't want to also, the last thing I'll say to that is that I don't, we've talked a lot about how low the wages are for childcare, educators and providers, which is overwhelmingly a field of females. And so I don't think that that's an accident, that it's a field overwhelming of females that is, really underpaid. And there's a lot of, like I said, females of color that are also in this field. And so, there are issues of, of sexism there, as well as racism when we look at the wages that childcare providers are making compared to, other people in places in other fields. I don't know, I think this might be similar, in greater Minnesota as it is in the metro. Somebody could go get a job at Aldi's or Walmart and make more than they are making, in a childcare program. So, so I think that there's something systemic in there that, should not be forgotten either.
For sure. Shirley, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
So the question you have understood it to be is what can we do to have more people in the field? Was that the question?
Yeah, exactly. More people, and just, what type of challenges have you encountered as a female and a woman of color in this industry, and as a person who provides direct care to children, just talking about how representation matters for the little children and diversity as they grow up.
Yeah. For me, the challenges that I met as a person, I'll just give a little history here. There was a time I was running, my program is a family program, but I run that program out of my home. So I was moving closer to the north side, and about 5 minutes from where we were living initially. And then I had a family who said that they could not move with me because I was moving closer to the north side. they didn't feel safe there. So they had to leave the program. And I told her that I couldn't change my mind from moving because of just this one family. I would love to have them, but if that is the issue, I wouldn't want to force them or ask them to come with me. So I respect their opinion, and I would take it that way. But deep down on the inside of me says something. So because I was moving to a place where they felt unsafe, they could not allow the child to move forward with me, so they had to leave the daycare. And for me, that was a real serious point to me. A serious point in that I'm a woman of color, and I'm moving to a place where you consider to be a place of color, a low income area. So because of that, you could not move with me because you felt that your child would not be safe. That was a big racism issue to me. But I didn't say anything, I left it that way, but I stuck in my mind, you know. So when me as a woman of color, when I look at it and see the field where I'm at, it says a whole lot. It says a whole lot to me. And sometimes they will come in the program and the things that they would normally not do to a person who is not a person of color, they would try to do that here. And I would tell them, no, if you wouldn't do that to John Brown or to Esther, don't do that to me. And I try to, make that clear. But some of them don't understand it. And I want to believe because I'm a woman of color, that's why they do that. If I wasn't in the category of being a woman of color, they wouldn't do that to me. So those are all things that we battle with every day. But yet, because we love the field, so we continue to remain in there, because out of the hundreds and thousands of people, you will find somebody who, at least that one family, who will be able to treat you fairly like any other person. So because of that, I try not to put everybody else in the box. I try to look at it from my perspective to say, well, I know I will meet a family that will not see me because of my color. They will see me as a human being just like them. So those are things that we face with every day, but we love the field, so we keep going. But yeah, it's there.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley, for that, for your thoughts. Vanessa and Ariella, would you care to share just your perspectives as Indigenous, women who are running the childcare business that you're running in your part of the state?
Yeah, absolutely. So for ours, we are an immersion school, and the reason why we want to raise the next generation of Dakota language speakers is because we believe that the Dakota language can help heal historical trauma. So we are a trauma-informed care in that aspect of why we do the wraparound services with it, to help with all of the social issues that we are seeing, and it's a systematic social issue we're seeing for not just Dakota, but Native Americans all across the country and all across the world. We are looking to help break those barriers, and we're looking to heal from them so that we can continue moving forward. And that's why we speak Dakota, and we're going to remember, reclaim, and revitalize with the language. I think, is there anything else you want to add, Ariella?
No, that really sums it up. I think something that we see as a school a lot is with the people in the surrounding area not wanting to come to our school because we're teaching a language, we're teaching a culture, and they're not interested. And that's totally up to them. We totally respect that. But we also bring that education aspect. But especially with Indigenous peoples, it's not just really childcare issue. It's middle school, high school. It's teachings all over about the history, even in Minnesota itself, the history of Minnesota, and just knowing where we come from and how this came about. So.
And Karen, just talk about, from your perspective, do you find you struggle with just a lack of diversity of staff and children in your area? Just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just from your perspective in terms of race and culture, what do you see?
You know, we actually have a fairly diverse population in both in our children and families as well as in our staff. That fluctuates because staff turnover is high, but we've been really blessed to have a nice mix of cultures, to have a nice mix of language, and so I'm really thankful for that. I don't necessarily think that's always the case, and I will say that we do a lot of education. We have had instances where that diversity has not been well received. And so we've had to do a lot of education with our families and to kind of move things in the right direction. But yeah, I'm thankful to say we actually have 4 guys on staff right now, and it's amazing. And that's hard to come by when you run a small center in a small rural community, but we've been really blessed to have that. And I will say, having that male energy on a regular basis every single day has been incredible for the children and families that we serve, as well as for the guys who work with us. But yeah, that's been great. So I'm thankful for that.
My older daughter, one of her favorite daycare teachers was a young man who played the guitar, and she thought that was great. So that was a good experience. And you mentioned staff turnover, and I know this is, a big issue in the industry. Just talk about, what do we do about that? I mean, Diane made a comment. It's, you could probably get paid better working at a local Aldi. How do we correct that? Because that's a big problem. Anyone wanna...
It is. I mean, I'll happily share what I think, but I don't know. It only goes so far. We have to. For me, one of the reasons I think that we tend to lose employees is either they're getting near retirement age, or perhaps their spouse has retired and now all of a sudden they need insurance. We see that. And then we also see the other end where they view it as, okay, I'm done playing, now I actually have to have a real job. So maybe on the younger end, and feeling like they have to get a job that's providing the other stuff, whether that be the professional view from the outside world. They want to feel like they're validated in the outside world. The insurance is a big piece of it. I think that we need to find a way to be able to provide those things for our employees. It's so rare for somebody to walk away, at least in my experience, to walk away from the early childhood field because they want to, because it's not for them. I think it's just so much more common that they do it because they have to, and that's what we have to correct.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this topic?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think we need to make the wage comparability follow to exactly what the work is. I think people really don't see the importance, and we started seeing it with the pandemic, and we need to make it just follow. How does that look? We need to start paying them their wage so that they don't feel like it's just a stepping stone job. We have a lot of young workforce employees here who just feel like this is where they're going to start, and then they're going to go off and do something else. We want them to feel like this is a career. They could get a degree here. They can really see themselves here 20, 30 years later, still excited and happy with the wonderful Wakayanja. And Wakayanja means children, and we call them sacred beings because we believe that they are the closest from when they came from the stars, because we call ourselves the Star Nation. And so they're the sacred beings that way. And I think we need to start acting like it and start paying people like that.
Yeah, we really do.
Sure. One of the questions I got here, do any of the panelists have experience partnering with high school or higher education to create a pathway for students to enter into the industry as a career? I think that's a great point. Anyone want to jump on that one?
I respond. Oh, Vanessa, do you want to go first on that one? You can. No?
You can take it away, Karen. I'll just follow you. I just love the words that come out of your mouth.
Oh, I feel like we're going to be friends after this, Vanessa.
Absolutely.
I love it. So we've really had a great experience working with the work study program in our high school, which has been wonderful. Typically, though, those are high school students that have already sought out a job with us and are working for us, and then they choose to do the work study as part of their day. We're currently working with our school to partner on a couple of other projects, and this is one of the new pieces that we're discussing is how do we implement that connection between the school and the early childhood field to potentially look at CDAs for our high school students who are interested in going into the field. I'm excited. I think that's moving in the right direction, and we're going to see some of that in our like facts classes, so the family and basic skills classes in our high school.
Yes, one of our high schools just built a whole wing of trades. It's really exciting because remember we were like, oh no, we don't need trades, and now we're like, okay, just kidding, we need the trades. They built a whole workforce wing is how I can explain it. And with that, we are really we've been sharing some resources of how there's like this implementation guide that high schools can use. The CDA professional something put it out, and so I forwarded it to the 2 high schools near us to see if we can start working on that to get high schoolers start thinking about early childhood, because we have high schoolers who are interested in coming and shadowing. Well, now what? You know, let's get them their next step. For employees, for us, we are very strength-based. When we began, we just opened August 2018. So we had about 7 to 8 months to open and rebuild. We remodeled the whole place before we opened doors. And with that, we hired our staff and we gave them CDAs, and now we're paying for their associates to help them break down barriers there, because we know less than 1% of college populations are American Indian. So why not? That just doesn't matter to us at this moment. We're going to get them the degrees that they deserve with the work that they want to do. And we're going to teach them the language that was taken from them, and so that we can continue to build, because we know retention and retainment comes when you hire people from the community.
Diane, any thoughts on, from the Metro perspective, how we engage young people and keep them in this industry?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than Karen and Vanessa. That's how you do it, is to just, reach out and show the benefits. I love the idea of, I saw it says that MDE is going to start providing CDAs for young people, and I love that idea. And those are the kinds of creative things that we're going to have to think about in order to really sustain our field.
So often I go back to early childhood is so similar to the nursing field, and we need to find a way to really parallel it. You've got your CNA, we have our CDA, you have your LPN, is that right? And then we move, but we can kind of move through it, and we should be able to do that in the same way. So it's about connecting that learning cycle to help people build.
Yeah. And that leads well into my next question. What are some of the biggest roadblocks to advancing the childcare industry like other wealthy nations have done? Diane?
So you look at like what some of the other wealthy nations have done, and they have put considerable investments into childcare. Some countries have, first of all, paid family leave, some up to a year. I think there's some places it's even more than that. Also, there are many countries, developed countries. In fact, I think we're one of the few developed countries that does not provide some kind of preschool or early learning opportunities that is completely paid for. So we are one of the only developed countries that where our system is such that the burden of paying for it is left to the parents or the family. to pay for the early learning opportunities. And so I think there's lots of other countries that we could model or take pieces from, that we could learn from. I will say though, with this pandemic and with some of the pandemic relief funding that has just recently been passed, I'm really hoping to see that, and there are some that has been earmarked specifically just for early learning and for childcare. And so I feel like this may be an opportunity for us to, if handled appropriately, to kind of switch some of that and kind of start moving in the right direction to get the support, the kind of supports we need for the field.
Diane, you're right. What we need to remember though is that $50 billion of early care and education money is one-time money. And so it can't just stop there. We really need our state and our federal government to take a peek at the fact that we need long-term investments. And while this is amazing, and what an incredible time for early childhood and for educators everywhere, this is only the start, and it has to only be the beginning. We have to continue lifting up and supporting our educators and our children and families continuously.
Anyone else want to weigh in before we do any closing remarks and questions?
Well, for me, I would say that even as the other panelists were talking, that a lot of things were coming through my mind. I will speak from the family child care perspective. In the family child care, things are really tough there. You are the cook, you are the accountant, you are the teacher, you are the helper, you are just everything. But then when they come to the place where they're looking for quality care, they say family child care, just put television on for the children to watch. They are not being taught. That's how they feel about family child care. But when you look at how can one person do all of those things? If you find somebody to help you, you do not have the money to pay them. Therefore, they come for a few months and they are gone. And then you'll be left with the children again. So if we want quality care, at least let them put in the budget or talk about, do something to helping family child care as well as centers, because centers, they are going through their own thing. They might not be saying it all, but they are going through their own thing, you know. So let them put some money in, helping us to help us get some kind of teacher. While you're the family provider, if you are the cook and you are the accountant and doing some other things, you can have a quality teacher who can be teaching the children. Right now, I have two, and I'm paying it. I myself, sometimes I cannot take pay because I have to meet their needs. You know. Yeah. So these are just my points. If we want quality care that couples with the education and everything, we have to have some kind of subsidy coming in continuously to help us help the kids.
Yeah. Well, Shirley, that's a perfect way to wrap this up. Just want to go around quickly to the rest of the panelists, just a 30-second or 1-minute closing thought on this conversation. Karen, if you want to start.
You love to put me on the spot. What is that? I guess I love this, and I think that Shirley said it so beautifully. We all have our own challenges, whether you're working in a Head Start program or you're working in a school early childhood program, or you're working in family childcare, or you're running a center. There are incredible challenges that each one of us face. And then you throw in urban or rural, the whole entire thing. We need government funding that allows for mixed delivery. I think that's really important so that families have choice in which program is going to work the best for them. And we need it to be long-term so that early childhood programs, regardless of the face of what they look like, can continue to be sustainable, because the only way that our economies and our communities can run is to have childcare. We are the base of everything that grows a community. We need to be recognized as such, and we need to be funded as such.
Great. Ariella, any quick closing thoughts?
I love what Julie and Karen both said. It's incredible to have, even to be part of this conversation, just because of how good it is and how essential it is, because childcare is very, very much essential, and there needs to be more. And I hope that this can start gearing towards some solutions, because the kids benefit. They benefit with having a good constant provider teaching them, caring for them, and it benefits the family as well. So thank you all for allowing me to have a voice in this.
Great. We thank you for being here. Vanessa, any really quick thoughts for closing?
I think my only closing thought would be the word washag unkichiapi, which is we all grow stronger together. So we're all raising that child together. It's all a team effort. So we all need to start respecting each other together. And that's putting that professionalism under that early childhood there. I think the biggest thing for me would be to help raise the children, and therefore we need to raise up those staff to make them confident, help them get exactly the curriculum that they need, to get the diversity training that they need, and therefore we're going to just create a better community that way. So I say pirame yapi to everybody.
Thank you. Diane, do you want to quickly close this out?
Yeah, I couldn't say it better than my fellow panelists. Just echo all the statements around the continued need for investment in early childhood. And I just want to say thank you for the invitation. I've had a great time with all of you all.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this. I thought this was a great discussion from diverse backgrounds. It's so important for representation, and I'm really honored that I was able to help moderate it. So Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Christina, and everyone, for such a good conversation. That was so rich, so nuanced. We really appreciate your time and your focus and your hard work every day with the children of Minnesota. We are looking forward to the next event in this series, which I'm going to put in the chat, is going to be Thursday, April 29th, and that's going to be on the topic of workforce. To wrap up this event, though, I loved how Vanessa said a moment ago, we all grow stronger together. That applies not only to our children and families and communities, but also to our state, all the different communities of our state. And I think that's kind of where Citizens League and Center for Rural Policy and Development came to the idea of this series of interconnected. We all grow stronger together. And so I hope that this has been one of many opportunities to explore those types of questions together. I want to thank Citizens League, would like to thank our co-hosts, Center for Rural Policy and Development. Thank you, Christina, and all of our great panelists today. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.